Okay, I'm still sat here talking to my colleague Dr. Emily Ryle about philosophy of sport. I thought an interesting question to ask you would be about the question of whether elite athletes are, as our culture often seems to think they are, heroes.
Yeah, I've got a real issue with this notion that we hold up athletes in our kind of cultural lives as something special, and we have far higher expectations for sports stars morally than we do for musicians or artists or anybody else in that
we
kind of
expect our
culture.
musicians to be morally really bad.
Exactly,
and like
yeah.
fun. But aren't sport people at least there because they deserve to be? They've achieved things, unlike, say, reality TV stars. Don't sports people, given that, make quite good heroes?
Well, if you're defining hero as somebody that you kind of look up to or aspire to in terms of what they've achieved in terms of athletic excellence, then yes, you can. You know, you could say that they're heroes. If you're looking up to them because you think that they're necessarily sort of morally good people, then I think that's more questionable. Because why should we expect people involved in sports to be any more kind of morally good than anybody else in other aspects of life?
You could argue, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here,
That's fair enough.
you could argue, particularly for people in professional sports who've achieved huge personal rewards, you know, become incredibly rich, footballers, say, who earn ridiculous amounts of money, and that part of what comes in exchange for that money, part of the deal, as it were, the contract, is that they have to play this role model thing for young people. Footballers aren't the best examples of moral heroes, I guess. Into both they're off the pitch and on the pitch, but could not you argue that part of the deal that people know when they get into elite sport is that they'll be held to this standard and that's to act as role models?
I think you can expect people involved in sport to uphold the rules of the sport, i.e., you know, not to cheat. It does get more difficult when there are certain cultures in sport which have always been questionable in the past. You know, the culture of elite cycling, for example, where it was almost expected for you to just do what you get told to do, take EPO, take performance-enhancing substances that were illegal, and there was the culture involved there. But for individual athletes, I think you can expect them to play fair, play by the rules. But whether you expect them to, therefore, not cheat on their partners, or whether they, give lots of money to charity, I think that's a different. We can't expect that from athletes.
So we might reject the idea of them heroes in their personal life, but thinking again about these kind of multi-million-pound paid professional footballers, you think that perhaps there should be an expectation on them not to behave badly in terms of gamesmanship or sportsmanship, in terms of cheating, in terms of diving, in terms of shirt pulling, in terms of the kind of small kind of attrition stuff. Should there be an expectation they behave in those ways morally? Is that part of what it means to play fair, to not kind of take part in that stuff that's kind of accepted but isn't, many of us, if we're watching the game, fair?
I think that, again, it's a difficult question to answer, because there's culture surrounding individual sports. So in football, for example, there's a lot of that goes on that we would say, we wouldn't want to see our children do, diving if they don't get, touched in the box, or particular aspects of gamesmanship. So I would like to think that it would be nice if there was a culture whereby there was better sportsmanship, but I don't think we can expect these, especially if they're professional athletes, their livelihoods depend on them winning games.
So they're being paid to win.
They are being paid to win.
Not being paid to stand there as a
exactly.
hero.
You get certain individuals that will be upheld as particularly good sportsmen, but you'll get other individuals that will actually they'll almost be celebrated because they're not. And you can think of many footballers, for example.
Just to catch you on the hop slightly, I just thought this question, so I'm going to ask it. It's related. With the rise of, or increasing televisation of women's football, say, and women's sports, and those, is there a different expectation, you think, from commentators from the world, and when women play football or rugby and it's televised, whether there's a kind of male culture about aggression and things, in terms of when people see women doing that, there's a different feel about heroes, and is our kind of ideal of the ideal hero different for, say, women footballers and women and male footballers?
I think there's probably women probably feel a greater expectation upon them in order to develop their credibility as athletes. They feel that they're expected to behave better, and certainly from my previous sport of rugby, I think that the girls that are involved in rugby feel a greater responsibility to ensure that they're providing a good example to others, just because they want to get the credibility that they deserve.
Just, I think, perhaps mixed in with a lot of sports where they've traditionally been, at least at the high profile level, very male sports, is that kind of thing which is a half condemnation but also a half lionisation of aggression. And so I wonder whether the commentator kind of uses those kind of cultural stereotypes we have of men and women, and it struggles to get away from them a bit.
I'm not sure about that.
I haven't watched enough women's football to listen.
I think again, for instance, in rugby, aggressive, hard tackles are applauded, if they're fair. I think there's always kind of cultural issues with particular people where they feel that women shouldn't be acting in that way. But I think it's changing. I definitely think it's changing. It's certainly changed in my lifetime. There's obviously a difference between aggression and violence, and I don't think you see as much violence in women's sport as you do in men's sport, and that may be.
I guess that's changed a lot with people who are involved in the sport or aware of it as it gets more and more shown on TV. Be interesting to see what the cultural responses are. Thank you, and that fountain again marks the end, I think, outside.